Hello and welcome to today's episode, which is all about making risotto and then giving you 3 different variations, so you'll have plenty of ideas to choose from midweek. I tried making some vegan halloumi cheese a couple of days ago and it failed and I suddenly got hit by fatigue and my brain wasn't working well enough to try and solve the problem. But in getting the ingredients together for that, I found some risotto rice that I've had for ages and was covered behind some other stuff. Failures in this kitchen are never true failures. I tend to always glean something from it, so take those silver linings where you can. I'm going to show you how to make a vegan risotto, which if you're in the States would be risotto. Risotto? Something like that. I've just checked the Italian pronunciation and it is risotto. I'll show you how to make a basic one and then I'll give you 3 different kind of variations. So there's a couple ideas because it's a fairly easy meal to put together. Just takes a little bit of stirring, that's all. I'll show you how to make a classic mushroom risotto and then I'm going to do like a Mediterranean tomato, herb and feta, and then I'm going to do leek and mature cheddar. If you'd like to learn how to make more delicious things like these lovely risottos, like this video, subscribe to the channel, tap the bell icon if you want to be alerted as soon as anyone's published. I've got a packet of baby chestnut mushrooms. That's going to be for the mushroom one, funnily enough. And I've got some leeks as well for the other one. My plan is to air fry these, just so then I can chuck it in the air fryer and not have to use up another burner on my stove. So I'm going to get those done now, just prepped. And then I can put them in a bit later on. I just want them done and out the way so I don't forget. While we're here, I'll also show you these. So that was a handful of dried porcini mushrooms that I just hydrated in boiling water. So they plump up kind of, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times the size. We're going to use the mushrooms in the risotto itself, but we'll also use that liquid just for some extra flavour. And I've got my air fryer basket here. I've lined it with foil and I created like a lip there, can you see? As like a divider, because I'll do the leeks on one side, mushrooms on the other. Not crucial, but because I'm going to do like garlic mushrooms, I wanted to keep that flavour away from the leeks, so I thought that'd be a nice way of doing it. For the mushrooms, I've got a bit of paper there that I'll just use to wipe off any mud if I see it. They're quite small ones, so I think I might just do that into quarters. Just like that. I think that will be, because they'll probably shrink to about half the size by the time they're cooked. I opted for the chestnut, which I think are criminy in the States, just because they're, fairly easily available at the supermarket. They've got a nice flavour, kind of mild, but do feel free to use oyster or, I don't know, shiitake, anything you like really. Any that are that sort of size, I'm just leaving whole. I've got 2 leeks. So I'm going to take off the very dark green bit because it is quite tough. Split this top layer, peel that back because you'll see it's full of mud. Give it a rinse. Cut those into sort of inch thick chunks. And then I'll arrange the little pieces in the basket. Drizzle some oil on the leeks. And then for the mushrooms, I've got about a tablespoon of vegan butter that I'll just cut into small pieces. And I'll scatter those in amongst. Do salt and pepper over everything. And then I'll pop some crushed garlic and herbs on the mushrooms, sort of 5 minutes towards the end of the cooking. So I'll put this in the air fryer, but I'm not going to turn it on yet. Now we'll move on to making the risotto itself. The key to a good risotto is the rice that you use. So this is arborio rice. It's a very short grain Italian rice that's really starchy. The trick to cooking it is adding liquid in really slowly, letting it absorb and cook out. Then you add a bit more. And what happens is it's the friction of the rice grains rubbing against each other that kind of releases the starch. It is a bit of a painstaking process, but it is worth it. So if you see people adding cream into a risotto, it's not how you make it. It doesn't need any dairy products in there other than cheese, that kind of butter. But it doesn't need any cream. It's the starch that makes it creamy. You can cheat it obviously and use a basmati rice, but it's not a true risotto. So I'm going to set a pan up at the back that's going to have stock in it. So I'm going to do around 3.5 litres of water. I'm going to make quite a big quantity of risotto because I want to freeze some. I'm going to use some of this Muscle plant-based chicken flavour stock powder. I'm going to do around 1.5 tablespoons, and then once I add the extra water, then I'll test it again. And then to boost up the savoury umami-ness and kind of lean into the cheese aspect a little bit, I'm going to add some nutritional yeast. I'll do about 1 tablespoon. Kind of looks like fish food, but it tastes incredible. It's like cheesy, nutty, makes a great popcorn topping. So it's going to keep that warm on the stove. I've added the second kettle of water, and I did another 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast and probably another 4 of the stock powder. I've got 2 kind of medium white onions. Feel free to use whatever you like. I'm just going to do a very simple dice on there. So once you've made a series of vertical cuts, and do horizontal. I've got 2 tablespoons or so of extra virgin olive oil heating up in the pan. Once the oil comes up to temperature, drop the onions in. And we're going to fry these off until they start going a bit translucent. So probably 8 to 10 minutes, something like that. Make sure everything's coated in the oil. I'm going to use some of this miso butter that's still left over from making the stuffed tofu. So I'm going to hold off on adding any salt because this is quite salty. But if you haven't got that, do feel free to add a little bit of salt in. But bear in mind your stock is also going to have salt in it as well. I've crushed down a whole head of garlic. Garlic is tiny in the UK at the moment. Don't know what's going on. I'm going to put most of it in. That'll keep that amount, probably half a teaspoon or so for the mushrooms. Fry this off for a couple minutes. You want to stir it quite often once the garlic's in, just so it doesn't burn. This is the rice I'm going to use. Looks like a massive quantity because it is, but I want to have some that I can put in the freezer for emergencies. 4 cups of the arborio rice, which is about 740 grams. So I'm going to fry this off for no more than 2 minutes. It just helps get a bit of extra flavour onto the rice. I'm going to add in some vermouth. This particular one that I use, it just tastes like white wine. I know some of them have got herbs in there as well. You want to avoid that one. But this is basically just like a shelf-stable white wine, which is great because it doesn't go off, or it takes ages to go off. So there's that much left in the bottle, and I might even chuck that whole thing in. That's my half cup measure. So I'd say it's probably 2/3 of a cup, something like that. I'm going to turn the temperature down a bit onto a 5. Do feel free to skip the wine if you either don't want it or you avoid it for whatever reason. So you can kind of see already, hopefully, we can try and zoom in a little bit for you. It is already going a little bit creamy, which is the starch starting to release. So I'm just going to cook this out a tiny bit longer, just until that kind of pungent alcohol smell goes, because then we're just left with the nice flavour of it rather than the actual booziness of it. In the past, I've added red wine at this stage. Red wine and tomato and red onion makes a really nice risotto. Okay, now it's time to start adding liquid. So I'm going to do, I think, like 2 ladlefuls, something like that. And this part, adding the liquid, that is the most laborious part of the process. You do need to take it kind of slow and steady, cook it off until all of it's absorbed, and then add a bit more and a bit more. Whenever it gets to the point where it's kind of dry on the bottom of the pan, that's when you know you can add a bit more stock, because the rice is absorbing up most of it, but you are also losing a bit through the steam as well. For the tomato, herb and feta one, I'm going to use the kind of chopped tomatoes. I might put this in a pan now and start it cooking off, just to get some of that flavour off, because it's quite tangy. I want to mellow it out, so I might as well just chuck it in the pan, and then it can be, on a very low temperature. So I've got the pan of the tomatoes just bubbling away there. At this stage of the cooking, you really only want to be on a medium kind of heat, because any hotter, and it's just going to start evaporating more liquid. I'm going to add a few flavourings into the tomatoes now, because then that can all be kind of mingling together. I've picked about a teaspoon of fresh thyme. Got half a teaspoon or so of dried marjoram. And about half a teaspoon of dried oregano. Some black pepper. Pinch of salt. And then I'm adding a small pinch of sugar, just white granulated sugar, just to help bring out some of the sweetness of the tomatoes. Give that a stir. I've just had a random idea that I want to try out. I'm going to see if I can make a tuile out of vegan cheese. A tuile is like a very thin, crisp, crackery type thing. So I've rolled up a piece of greaseproof paper. Just makes it easier to get in the pan. It's just a little cast iron pan. Put that on 5, I think. Grated some of this Cathedral City Extra Mature. I've not tried this one before, so I'm looking forward to it. But I've done that on the microplane, so it's very fine, quite fluffy. And then I'll try and get it in a somewhat even layer. I'm hoping this is going to melt, and then when I take it off the heat, it'll cool back down and be crispy, especially because vegan cheese is made with a lot of starch. I'll show you the tuile. Yeah. Might leave it on for another minute or so just to see if I can get a little bit more colour. But yeah, I think that's going to work quite well. Okay, so the risotto is almost there, I think. So it's really lovely and creamy. And when I try a bit, there's still a little bit of texture right in the middle. It's nice and al dente. I'm going to put one more ladle full in. Let's do 2, why not? And I'll let this absorb just while I deal with the porcini mushrooms. So for the porcini, I'm just going to take a few out the dish and give them a squeeze just to get that liquid out. And then I'm just going to kind of shred it down quite fine. So shredding the porcini down just so it's nice and fine. Not a crucial ingredient, although it does add a nice bit of depth and extra flavour. So I'm going to put some of the mixture on the counter. And then I'm going to squash it with a tiny little bit of chalkiness right in the middle, and that's what we want. To finish the risotto, I'm going to add in little bits of that miso butter. So I'm just going to take spoonfuls like that, maybe do 2 to start with. I'll link to that in the video description for you. It's very easy to make. The miso butter adds a nice bit of kind of umami funkiness, and it's kind of taking the place of parmesan, like you'd put a non-vegan version. Okay, so I'm going to put the leek and mushrooms on, 15 minutes at 165. So now I'm going to roughly divide into 3. I'm going to push this pan onto the back and just have that on a very low heat. Pull the tomatoes to the front, and I'll spoon very simple. It's just a case of incorporating this very gently so I don't flick a bright red tomato all over a pale top. We'll let that absorb some of the liquid from the tomatoes. I'm just going to add a touch of tomato puree, tablespoon, something like that. Just going to finish off my tube. Just going to add a touch more garlic, so like half a teaspoon of powdered garlic. I'm just going to decant this into something else and give the pan a quick clean. We'll do the leek and cheddar now. So I'll take half the remaining mixture. For some extra flavour, I've chopped up some celery leaf, and it's just the frilly bit, you know, in the middle of a stalk of celery. So about a teaspoon or so of that. I've got about a cup of extra mature vegan cheddar, probably 100 grams-ish, and black pepper. Might need to add a touch more stock, just because the cheese is going to thicken this up a bit, but we'll see. If you want more salt, feel free to add more salt, but for me, because that cheese is nice and tangy, a bit salty. Bring big pot back to the front. So I'm going to add that mushroom liquor, that's what it's called, liquor, but I'm going to do it in spoons because porcini can be really gritty, so I don't want to just dump the whole dish in. I'll take it out this way, and then that way the grit will stay on the bottom. I don't know how well that's going to pick up on camera, but there's lots of crud at the bottom of the dish. So stir that in. Ooh, instantly the smell changes. It's really rich and deep. Add in the chopped porcini. Black pepper. And a slight touch of salt. Less than 1/4 teaspoon though. Just a little pinch. I'm not adding any cheese into this one. Let's wait for the mushrooms and leeks, and then we'll do some eating. So the trio of risottos is all ready. Looking amazing. Smelling even better. It's time to dive in. So this is the cheddar and leek one. Texture is lovely and creamy. That mature cheddar that I use is very tangy and umami, and the leeks are really nice and sweet, which is really nice together. And the risotto itself still got a little bit of texture right in the centre of the grains, but other than that, it's really nice and soft, creamy. That's the tuile that I made. It's very humid in the kitchen, and they've been standing for at least half an hour, so they've softened up a bit, but yeah, as an idea it works. It's the tomato and feta. It's very fresh and vibrant, whereas the leek and cheddar was more comfy, cozy kind of thing, whereas this is zingy, light and vibrant. I think you could even tolerate some black olives in there. That would work quite nice as well. It's like a pizza. And that vegan feta that I put on top just adds a nice bit of salt, extra bit of creamy tanginess. Classic mushroom risotto. The only thing I put in there to give it that colour is the porcini liquid. So yeah, it's a really nice thing to have in the cupboard, the dried ones. I scattered on the garlic mushrooms once they were done out of the air fryer. It's umami, rich, deep flavours. Not too salty though, but just lots of depth in flavour. I made up some vegan parmesan earlier. So it's like, you know, like the stuff you buy pre-grated, it's that kind of texture. I'll link to it down in the description for you. It's just cashews blitzed with salt, MSG, nutritional yeast, onion and garlic. And it tastes just like the cardboard stuff, you know, the stuff in the cardboard tube. Yeah, it just adds a really nice cheesy kick to it. And that stuff keeps for weeks in the fridge. It's really nice on pasta, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to put a fair bit in the freezer, I think, especially the tomato one, because there's quite a bit of that. I guess I messed up the calculation. The texture's going to degrade in the freezer. There's no getting past that. It's going to go softer. If I don't think ahead and defrost it fully, I'll probably put it in a saucepan with a bit of water, maybe a bit of stock, maybe even oat milk, and just let it go really slowly and defrost the block that way. Keep it on like a 3, something like that. And then once everything's thawed, then start bringing the temperature up higher. Maybe add in a touch more herb or cheese or something just to liven it back up again. But I think as an emergency meal, it's going to be perfect. When I'm sitting and editing, I'm going to put some other ideas down in the pinned comment for you, just other flavour combinations and that kind of thing. So make sure you check down there. I want to take this opportunity to say hello and I love you to my supporters over on Patreon. It's lovely to have people who support me emotionally and financially. Let's be honest. Food's expensive. I'll leave a link down in the description if you want to sign up to the Patreon. Not only will you get the chance to give me a bit of support, but you'll also get access to the film and TV chat, any behind the scenes stuff that I've got going on. If you'd like plenty more proof that eating plant-based doesn't mean you have to eat sticks and mud, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tap the bell icon if you want to be alerted as soon as a new one's published. And then while you're waiting for the next one, have a look at this.